Hi everybody, and you're very welcome to this year's Leaving Cert Biology Predictions 2024 video with exam revision. Now, we will get into the predictions a little bit later on in the video. First of all, I just want to give a quick rundown of the layout of the exam and what you can expect to see on the day of the exam. So the Leaving Cert Biology exam has three sections. We have Section A, we have Section B, and we have Section C. Section A is the short answer questions. There are 7 questions in the short answer section. You're only required to answer 5 of them, each of them carrying 20 marks. Section B is the experiment questions. There's 3 questions here. You're required to answer any 2 of those, each one carrying 30 marks. And then the long answer questions are Section C. There are 7 questions here. You're required to answer any 4. Each question carries 60 marks, giving a grand total there of 240 marks. Now, the long answer questions are questions 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Questions 11 to 15, the first 5 long questions. If you were to choose to answer one or more of them, which you will have to do, you'll have to answer at least 2 of those, excluding 16 and 17. You have to answer all of the parts of questions 11 to 15 if you were to choose to answer any of those. Questions 16 and 17, the last 2 questions on the paper, if you were to choose to answer those questions on the day of the exam, you only have to answer 2 parts. Now, before COVID, before any changes came into the Leaving Cert Biology papers in the last couple of years, there used to be part A, B, and C in questions 16 and 17. There's now parts A, B, C, and D. So even though we have more choice, you're still only required to answer 2 parts if you're to answer questions 16 and 17. Now, this is detailed at the start of Section C in your exam paper anyway, but it's just for you to know. Now, your short answer questions, they're 20 marks each, giving you a grand total of 100 marks, so that's 25% of your exam paper. The experiment questions are a grand total of 60 marks, which is 15% of the paper, and the long answer questions, as I said, are 240 marks, which is 60% of the paper. So the long answer questions definitely are the ones carrying the most weight there. Now, the course structure for Leaving Cert Biology, I just want to give a quick overview of this because this will make a little bit more sense in how we can approach the exam on the day and how we can try and maximise the marks we can get on the day. So there's 3 units in Leaving Cert Biology. We have Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3. Unit 1, you can see there, is by far the shortest. Unit 2 is a little bit longer, and Unit 3 is the longest of the 3 units. Now, if you have a look at Unit 1 there to start off with, you can see that there's just 3 topics in there. We have the scientific method, we have food, and we have ecology. A couple more topics there within Unit 2. That's where we'll see things like the cell structure, photosynthesis, respiration, enzymes pop up in there as well, and so too does DNA, RNA, and genetic crosses. Unit 3 then is mostly anything related to the human and the plant system. So you can see there we have plant structure, plant transport, with the circulatory system, lymphatic system, digestive system, breathing system, and so on. So don't worry too much about the ins and outs of the exact topics that are in each of the units. The main one I want to focus on there is just Unit 1. Just have a quick look at it there. See how short Unit 1 is in comparison to Unit 2 and Unit 3, because that's really going to help us now when we look at how the course structure actually translates across to what we will see on the paper on the day. Now, if you have a look at the table here, you can see here I've broken it down into Section A, Section B, and Section C. So in Section A, in the short answer questions, and I should say this is based on pre-COVID, so this is related to when we used to have 6 short questions, not 7, but the same idea still stands here. 2 short questions will definitely come from Unit 1. 2 short questions will definitely come from Unit 2, and 2 short questions will definitely come from Unit 3. That 7th long question likely will come from Unit 2 or Unit 3, most likely being Unit 3 because it's the longest. But the big thing I want you to focus on there is Unit 1, which we seen a couple of minutes ago, only had 3 topics, the scientific method, food, and ecology. But 2 short questions have to be asked on those 3 topics. So you're guaranteed 40 marks on those 3 topics. The experiment questions vary a little bit. There are a couple of changes with the experiments, which I'll get to in a couple of minutes. But again, we can see there that we're guaranteed 1 long question, usually an ecology question, from Unit 1. So just knowing those 3 topics, food, scientific method, and ecology, we have 2 short questions giving us 40 marks and 1 long question giving us 60 marks. So 100 marks out of the 400, 25% of your exam is going to be based on those 3 topics. Okay, so I would definitely recommend knowing those 3 in detail, because that will be 25% of the exam. Before you look at anything else, just those 3 is 25%. Now, there's about 22 experiments on the course as well. There are a couple of changes this year as well, which will allow you to, I suppose, pick and choose which experiments you potentially would like to study. You'll know which experiments are coming up within each question. The experiment questions are worth 15%. So just looking at the 3 topics in Unit 1, food, scientific method, and ecology, and the experiments, that's 40% of your final exam. Okay, so I would definitely recommend for any student at this point who is maybe struggling with the volume of content going into the exam to focus on the Unit 1 chapters and to focus on your experiment questions. Now, a little bit of advice for Section A, the short answer questions. I would recommend that you spend about 30 minutes working on these. There are 7 questions. You do only have to answer 5 of them, but I would recommend answering all of the questions if you can. Time should allow for this. If you were to answer more than the 5 required questions, you will be marked on your best 5. So, for example, if you were to answer all 7 short questions, all 7 of them will be graded by the examiner, and whichever 5 questions you scored the best on, that's the marks that you will be awarded. So definitely attempt them. For these, just know your definitions and get straight to the point. There isn't any room for waffle in these. There's usually 1 or 2 keywords that the examiner is looking for. So just make sure, go back through all of the chapters that you've looked at over the last 2 years and make sure you know your keywords. I would recommend reading through all the questions at the start, putting a question mark or an X beside the questions you're a little bit unsure of, and come back to these at the end of the exam if you've time. If you have any doubts and are unsure of an answer, just guess. What I say to my students is if you leave something blank, you're guaranteed to get yourself 0 marks. But if you put something down in the paper, there is a chance that you will pick up marks. And you'll know from all of the marking schemes in Leaving Cert Biology over the past couple of years, sometimes it's just 1 word that the examiner is looking for. So put something down. If you have that word there, there's a good chance you're going to get your marks. Just don't leave any blanks whatsoever. And the big thing with the short answer questions, it's practice, practice, practice. The questions are very, very repetitive, especially the first couple of questions where food and the scientific method are examined. Them questions, they're very, very repetitive. So just make sure you're going back, practicing all of the past exam papers, practicing past mock questions, and just get into the habit of being able to answer those questions without looking at your notes or without looking at anything for support. For Section B, the experiment questions, there's 3 questions here. You have to answer 2 of them. These questions will be worth 15% of your final grade. You should have time to answer all of the experiment questions, so to do that extra experiment question. So I would recommend to do that, and your best questions will be awarded. So answer all 3 experiment questions if you can, and the 2 that you do the best on, you will get the marks for. So there's 22 experiments in total. I would recommend knowing them all in detail, but if you are struggling with the amount of content and the amount of detail that's in the experiments, the new changes that you will have on your exam paper this year will help you with that, and I will go through that in a couple of minutes. Now, experiments like the scientific method, preparing the animal and the plant cell slides, the isolation of DNA experiment, the germination condition experiment, and the enzyme experiments, they're the ones that do seem to come up a little bit more often than others, so I would recommend to know those. Now, for 2024, we will know going into the exam what experiments potentially could come up within each question. So prior to 2020, prior to COVID, it was complete. We had no idea. We had no idea what experiment could come up in question 8, what experiment could come up in question 9, what experiment could come up in question 10. But now, going into the exam in a couple of weeks in June, you know that question 8 is going to ask the food tests, the ecology habitat study, the preparation and examination of the animal and plant cells, and the isolation of plant from DNA tissue. Now, what they could do is they could choose one of those experiments, for example, the ecology one, and ask an entire question on that. Or what they could do is they could kind of do like a pick and mix approach, where they ask a part or 2 about the food tests, a part or 2 about ecology, 1 or 2 little subparts about the animal and plant cells, and 1 or 2 little parts about the isolation of DNA from plant tissue. Now, what the trend seems to be for these experiment questions is that 1 question per year would be kind of that pick and mix approach. It was 2021 where they actually had that for question 8. An ecology question came up in 2023, so I would imagine it would be the isolation of DNA from plant tissue, possibly could come up here in 2024, or again, it could be that pick and mix approach, but I will get to the proper predictions in a couple of minutes. The question 9 experiments, the experiments that they will analyse here, is the preparation and production of alcohol by yeast, the investigation of the influence of light intensity or carbon dioxide intensity on the rate of photosynthesis, the enzyme immobilizations and its application, the effect of pH and temperature on the rate of enzyme action, the effect of heat denaturation on the rate of catalase or enzyme activity, and then conduct any activity to demonstrate osmosis. So question 9 can only ask us about those experiments. And question 10, a couple more experiments in here. We have the investigation of the growth of leaf yeast using agar plates, the preparation and examination of a transverse section of a dicot stem, the heart dissection, the effect of exercise on the breathing rate or pulse rate of a human, the IAA experiment, so that was the plant growth regulator experiment, the use of starch agar or skimmed milk plates to show digestive activity during germination, and then the conditions required for germination as well. Now, what I would say about the experiments, you only have to answer 2 of these questions. So if you are struggling with the amount of detail and the amount of preparation that it takes to prepare the experiment questions for the exam, I would recommend at this point to pick which 2 questions you're going to focus on and make sure you know those experiments inside out and upside down. So for example, if you feel more comfortable on the experiments in question 8 and question 10, well then at this stage just ignore the experiment questions in question 9 and make sure that the experiment questions within question 8 and the experiment questions within question 10, you are fully comfortable with those and you know the ins and outs of all of them. Okay, you are only required to answer 2 of the 3 questions. You don't have to answer all 3 if you don't want to. I would recommend that you do, obviously to try and maximise the amount of marks that you will get, but you can kind of play to your strengths here now because you know what experiments are going to pop up in each question. So make sure to take a screenshot of that and just familiarise yourself with it and decide which experiments you're going to focus on. So for section C, the long answer questions, I would recommend spending up to about 2 hours for this section. It is the section that accounts for the most amount of marks, 240 marks, which is 60% of your final grade. Before you answer any question, I would recommend reading through all of the questions and deciding on which ones are best suited to you. Okay, and make sure it's the question as a whole that's best suited to you. Yes, you might be able to answer the part A and part B of one question, but are you able to answer the part C? So make sure don't just take into answering one question straight away. Have a quick 2-3 minutes, read through them all and put a little mark beside the ones that are best suited to you as a whole. Make sure you're including enough points for full marks. So we know everything is going to be marked in 3s. So if you're having a look at a 24 mark or a 27 mark question, you'll roughly be able to figure out how many marks each sub question is going for. So if you feel like it's a 6 or a 9 mark question, just make sure you're given 2 points for the 6 mark question and 3 points for the 9 mark question. Okay, so make sure you're given enough points to get the full marks. Genetics, photosynthesis, respiration and ecology are very common topics. Ecology normally is the question 11. Genetics then usually follows as the question 12. Photosynthesis and respiration can come up as a part of separate questions, or they can come up as a full question together. But those are the 4 most common questions for the long answers consistently across all years of exam papers. And the big thing with the long questions, it's practice, practice, practice. So at this point of 6th year, exam papers and marking schemes should be your best friend in the lead up to the exam. Make sure you're practicing the questions, marking it off the marking scheme. Practice some more questions, mark it off the marking scheme, and get to the point where you're able to look at a question and you kind of have an idea of, I know what the marking scheme is going to require for me to get full marks on this question. You should be able to get to that point where you're able to answer the question without looking back at your notes, without looking at your textbook, or without even looking at our exam revision videos. Try and get to the point where you can answer the questions without any support, because that's what you're going to need to be able to do on the day of the exam. So some general tips for the exam. What I would say first of all is on the day of the exam, just make sure and try and relax as best you can. Easier said than done. But all questions will have to be based on something that you've covered in class. Okay, you're not going to be asked something that you've not seen before. It might be phrased slightly different, but the content of the question is going to be the exact same. Okay, so if you're looking at a question, you're a little bit unsure, it has to be based on something you've seen before. So put down some knowledge you have about that particular topic. There's a chance it could be correct. Read the question carefully. Is the question asking you to state something or list something, or is it asking you to explain something? So the difference in the question word can dictate how much you are expected to write. So for example, if you're asked to state something or if you're asked to list something, that's probably going to be a shorter answer. But if you're asked to explain something, you're going to need a little bit more detail in your answer. Use a diagram if you can. So there's some questions which will pop up. As the saying goes, a picture paints 1,000 words, and that can really help them with your explanations and answers. And sometimes there are marks going for diagrams as well. For timing, if you do get stuck on a question, just move on. What I would say to my students is that the time that you're spent agonising over that one question you can't do is taking time away from questions further on in the paper, which potentially you can do. Okay, so just skip it, move on, and come back at the end when you have time. And as I said already there, exam papers should be your main focus right now. So practice them over and over and over again and use your marking schemes then to grade them, because it's the marking schemes that will be applied in July when they're being corrected. So the big thing everybody is waiting for is the predictions. So as always, it is incredibly difficult to predict what is going to come up in the exam. But I suppose if you look at trends as what's been there, what hasn't been there over the last couple of years, I suppose the general questions that are usually always there in section A or section B or section C, this kind of is how I've come up with this. So for section A, we can pretty much guarantee, well, we know there's going to be 2 questions coming up there from unit 1, which is food, scientific method and ecology. Now, I would probably say that it's going to be the scientific method and the food, but there's only 3 topics there anyway, so I would recommend knowing them all. So predictions for that will be the scientific method to know what a hypothesis is, know the features of good experimental design, so there needs to be replicates, it needs to be repeatable, you need to publish your results and so on, where are research results published, etc. So all about the scientific method, just make sure you know the steps involved in that. For food, just know the biomolecular structure of them. So for example, the chemical elements in carbohydrates are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, same for lipids and so on. So I would know the different elements that are found in each of the biomolecules, know their roles, know sources of them as well. So where would you find carbohydrates, give a metabolic role and give a structural role. That's the biggest thing that pops up with the food questions, is to know a metabolic role and to know a structural role. So just make sure and go back over those, and you know a metabolic role and a structural role of each. So I will just mention as well, the blue ones are questions I'm predicting from Unit 1, green is questions I'm predicting from Unit 2, and then the purple is questions I'm predicting from Unit 3. So for Unit 2, enzymes, I would say, is a trend to come up this year. So something like the lock and key theory, the induced fit theory, know the difference between anabolic and catabolic enzymes. I would also know the levels of organisation. So a group of cells together is known as a tissue, a group of tissues is an organ, a group of organs is an organ system, and so on. And I would also know here tissues and tissue culture. So the artificial growing of tissue in a medium outside of the body. So to look over tissue culture there. And then evolution and genetic engineering there as well. So just to know the scientists involved in evolution, so mentioning Charles Darwin, but also then knowing genetic engineering and knowing an application of genetic engineering. So probably one of the biggest examples people have looked at in the genetics chapter there is the production of insulin. So just make sure and have a look over genetic engineering for Section A. And then for Section C questions, I would say look at the eye and the ear, which is part of the nervous system. So to be able to label a diagram of the eye, be able to label a diagram of the ear, and know the functions of each of the structures within each of those. The excretory system, again, I would know the skin and the kidneys. So again, to be able to label those, but also to give the functions of each of the different parts and their role in excretion within the body. And then I would mention human breathing here as well. It's one of those questions that hasn't really popped up in many sections over the past couple of years. And it would be quite a nice little short question there to be able to label different parts of the breathing system, to know the idea of the gas exchange within the alveoli, and to know a disease associated with the human breathing system as well. So that would be the predictions there for Section A. So for Section B, we obviously know which experiments are going to pop up within Question 8, within Question 9 and Question 10, but these will be, I suppose, the questions that are predicted to come up based on trends. So I would say for Question 8, it'll be similar if you look at the 2021 paper, where there's a mix of questions from all experiments. So for example, in the isolation of DNA experiment, why did you add a protease? What is a protease? Why did you add salt? Why did you add washing up liquid when you're doing the isolation of DNA experiment? Why did you add methyl blue? Or what stain did you use for the animal cell? What stain did you use for the plant cell? It would be more of the why did you do every step. So if you have a look at 2021, I would probably say that it would be similar to that. For Question 9, photosynthesis has not appeared since 2018, so this is the investigate the effect of light intensity or carbon dioxide intensity on the rate of photosynthesis. So this is where you used Elodea, the underwater plant. So I would definitely recommend having a look over that experiment for Question 9. And then for Question 10, I would predict either the germination experiment, so what conditions are required for germination to occur, suitable temperature, water, and oxygen. And then the heart dissection as well. So they would be the predictions there for Section B. And then for Section C, obviously it's a little bit longer here, but it's laid out the exact same way as the short answer one. So we've Unit 1 in blue, Unit 2 in the green, and then Unit 3 questions in the purple. So again, there is going to be a huge amount of topics covered within Section C, because there are 7 questions and there are sub-parts of each of those questions. So there's going to be a huge amount of topics that are examined here, but these will be my predictions. So Question 11, most likely is going to be an ecology question. So know your definitions. What is a habitat? What is an ecosystem? What is a niche of an organism, etc. A question could pop up about food chains, food webs. Normally how this question pops up, there's somewhat of a reading comprehension, a very, very short paragraph involved in which answer questions based off of that. So just practice those questions based on previous exam papers. Energy transfer and paradigm of numbers, and then human impact on the environment as well. The habitat study could be mixed in here, given it was an experiment question in 2023. So just have an overview of how you carried out a quantitative study and a qualitative study of your chosen habitat. Photosynthesis and respiration, obviously we can't say they're absolute guaranteed questions, but they're there pretty much every year in some way, shape or form. So Just familiarise yourself with the stages involved in each, the products of each, and their chemical equations, their balanced chemical equations, and especially then for respiration, know the difference there between anaerobic and aerobic respiration. For enzymes, I did say possibly there about it coming up as a short answer question, but it could possibly pop up as a long answer question here as well, if it doesn't come up in the experiments in addition to that as well. But to know their protein nature, to know the role of an enzyme and how they act, so to be able to write a little bit of paragraph there about the enzyme substrate complex, how that is formed, the active site theory, how the active site will change shape slightly, how enzymes are specific and will only act with one type of substrate, and just to be able to mention the effect of pH and temperature on their activity. It could pop in there as well about the uses and advantages of using immobilized enzymes, and to know the difference then between anabolic and catabolic enzymes as well. So just make sure to know those. For genetics, again, if these questions were to pop up, it's usually kind of the same. It's sometimes it will pop up as you'll need a couple of definitions for the part A. So what's meant by an allele, what's meant by incomplete dominance, what's meant by homozygous, what's meant by heterozygous. So make sure and have a look over that. DNA profiling, I would say make sure and know that before the exam. And then also to be able to carry out monohybrid and dihybrid crosses. They used to be a lot more common than they have been in previous years. Not that they haven't come up, but it's been a couple of years since there's been an explicit question asking you to carry out maybe a dihybrid cross. So just familiarise yourself with those types of crosses. And then for Unit 3 within Section C, definitely recommend plant reproduction. It's usually there again, like photosynthesis and respiration, ecology and genetics in some way, shape or form. So to be able to describe pollen grain formation and the embryo sac formation, I would recommend looking over bacteria and viruses here. So for bacteria anyway, to know the growth curves and stages, to be able to draw the growth curve and name the stages. So that's the log stage, the lag phase, the stationary phase, and the death and decline phase. Know how both bacteria and viruses replicate and to be able to describe that in detail, possibly using diagrams to help you. For bacteria, to know the difference between batch and continuous flow processing. And then for viruses, to know what a vaccine is and how immunity is generated. Transport in plants is really, really important there as well. That's focusing on the structure of a plant, specifically the dicot stem, and to know the cohesion tension model or the Dixon-Joly model. So to be able to talk about in detail how water can move up a plant against the force of gravity, and to know then the structure of xylem and phloem within that. Very, very common question there as well, so I would definitely recommend knowing that. The musculoskeletal system came up as a short question in 2023, and there was a little bit of controversy about one of the questions that popped up as part of that. So I would not be surprised if it was to come up again, not as a short question this year, but to come up as part of a long question, possibly linked in with the nervous system here. So to know the structure and function of the nervous and the musculoskeletal system, so know the difference between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, to be able to draw a structure of a neuron, to be able to describe a reflex arc, and then know a disease associated with both the nervous and the musculoskeletal system there. And then I've put in the circulatory system here as well. So just to know the structure of the heart, the importance of the SA and the AV node in the control of the heartbeat, to know a disease of a circulatory system, so to know what's causing it, possible treatment for it and so on. And then to know the blood and the functions of the different blood cells, so the red blood cells, the white blood cells and the platelets, and where they were formed, what I would say would be really, really important there. So that is my predictions then for 2024. Now, just before I let you go, I just want to mention about all of the resources that we have available for you over the next couple of weeks to help you prepare for your exams in June. So we have what's called the complete revision package on our website, ExamRevision.ie, and we have hundreds of bite-sized video tutorials that will make your learning over the next couple of weeks that little bit easier. And we also have 10% off all of the packages over the next couple of weeks for you. So if you use the code 2024TIPS, all capital letters, you will automatically get 10% off at checkout. Now, what can you expect to get when you sign up for the complete revision package? There's bite-sized video tutorials on all content associated with many junior cycle and leaving cert courses. We've PowerPoint presentations, we've H1 standard notes, we've all past exam and mock paper questions, all marking schemes are provided. We have self-correcting MCQ quizzes. We have a reflection log for you to fill in as you go, so you can analyse your progress and set goals for yourself. And then we have a smart adaptive technology to guide your learning, so it will be able to pick up on particular topics you might be struggling with and recommend different videos for you to watch. Now, for junior cycle, we currently have 8 subjects available, probably not relevant to anybody watching the Leaving Cert biology prediction, so we'll go and have a look at the Leaving Cert subjects available. And you can see here we have 17 of these subjects available. So we have Irish, English, we have both higher and ordinary level maths, history, geography, ag science, physics, applied maths, biology, chemistry, business, economics, French, Spanish, music and PE. So a huge range of subjects available there for you to choose from. And as I said, it doesn't have to be biology you sign up for. You can sign up for any of those and you will get 10% off using the 2024 tips. Now, in a couple of minutes, I will give you a complete walkthrough of the website so you can see what to expect when you log in. But that just gives you a brief overview there of what you can see when you do make your account. So we have video tutorials here. You can see on the right hand side. This link here will bring you to all the PowerPoint presentations associated with a topic. We have a resource pack there, which is the H1 standard notes. These are our self-correcting quizzes, and then this is where you will find all past exam papers and mock questions. And you can see here within this particular topic, which was the Earth, you can see that there is actually 12 videos there associated with that. They're usually around 6 to 8 minutes long, so there'll be 12 videos, 6 to 8 minutes long, which will cover that entire topic, and that's the same for every single subject that we have on our platform. Now, I'm not going to read down through these reviews, but if you go onto our ExamRevision website, you will see that there are lots of reviews there from students and parents who have used the website over the past couple of years and have found it really, really useful. A lot of them have said that their grades greatly improved from using the platform. And finally, just before I give you the walkthrough of the website, we do have some revision courses popping up over the next couple of weeks. So at the end of May, we will have 1 day intensive revision courses. We'll have one for biology. If you keep an eye on our website, you will see the date over the next couple of weeks. But they will run from Saturday the 18th to Sunday the 26th of May. They're 3 hours long, so they will run in the evening times from 5 to 8 p.m, or they will run on the Saturday or Sunday from 9:30 to 12:30. So there will be details on our website with the particular topics that are going to be looked at in each of the individual subjects. But there will be expert teaching from all of our tutors. They will go through exam technique. They will go through some of the topics which might be, I suppose, predicted to come up, or the ones that they would see as more most important for the exam. You will be provided with a suite of H1 notes, which will help you with your study over the next couple of weeks. You can attend the course live. You will be able to watch it back on demand. It is recorded, so you can watch it back again and again and again in your own time. Or if you'd signed up and you actually were unable to make it on the day, you will still be able to receive the recording and all of the resources and watch it back in your own time. Most of our tutors are written examiners, so they will have a great insight as to how to approach the exam so you can maximise your marks. As I said, focus will be on the most common topics, and they will go through the probable exam questions for the Leaving Cert exam 2024. So just before we go through the website run through, again, 2024 tips is going to give you 10% off the complete revision package. Now, when you log into your ExamRevision account and you make one, you can see here I have a couple of different subjects that I can choose from. You will only be able to see whichever ones you have signed up for. So if we go down here and we find biology, you can see here that I have the complete revision package. I'll click in and you can see down here towards the bottom, we have our 3 units, Unit 1, Unit 2, and then we have Unit 3. And we also have some notes there available on the experiments as well. So I'm just going to pick one of these as an example. I'll pick ecology there, 1.4. Every single one of them is going to be laid out the exact same. You'll see here I have my video tutorials. I have presentations, so this is PowerPoint presentations associated with the topic. I have a full set of H1 notes, so all I would have to do there is press on ecology and a downloadable and printable PDF will appear with the notes. We have self-correcting quizzes, so if you press there 1.4a about the ecosystem, you can see what is an ecosystem and you can press the answers, submit as you go, and you will get a score 6 at the end. And then really importantly for this stage of the year, we have our exam questions. So this will be all past state exam questions, but also all past mock exam questions as well. We have a timer feature over here on the right hand side as well, which will really get you into the mindset of completing questions under a time pressure. So you can add a specific amount of time, set the timer, and then it will go off after that specified amount of time to let you know you should be finished the question at that particular point. We do have a random question generator as well, so if you were working through a topic and you just wanted to try a couple of questions but you're a little bit unsure about which ones to do, just press the random question generator and it will automatically pull you up one of the past questions associated with that topic. So as I said, it's not just Leaving Cert Biology that's on this course, that's on this platform. We have 17 Leaving Cert subjects available, and you have that discount code now, 2024 tips, which will get you 10% off. Every single topic within this is laid out the exact same way. So Unit 1, Unit 2 and Unit 3 for biology. It doesn't matter which one you click into, you're going to have the exact same features available to you. The video tutorials, presentations, H1 notes, quizzes, and all your past exam questions and state exam questions. So hopefully you found this interesting. Definitely keep an eye on our website over the next couple of weeks for the resources that are there, but also information about our May revision course. and hopefully your study over the next couple of weeks goes as well as it possibly can. Keep in mind that they are predictions and they're not guaranteed questions to come up, but trends over the past couple of years. That would be my best guess as to what would be there on the exam on the day. So the very best of luck with your study, and hopefully we'll see you either at our Saturday sessions or on one of our revision courses very, very soon.